Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving into a massive, hidden world that operates literally right under our noses. We usually think about businesses just in terms of the products they sell, right? But the physical spaces they occupy, we're talking huge factories, corporate headquarters, massive distribution centers. Choosing exactly where to put those is honestly one of the most critical and, frankly, most expensive strategic moves a leadership team will ever make. It's the hidden architecture of global business.
To really grasp the high stakes here, let's start with a global powerhouse you absolutely know, FedEx. So think about this for a second. Why on earth does an enormous global delivery airline route millions of totally different packages through one single central city every single night? Why not just fly them directly from point A to point B? It kind of seems crazy, right?
Well, the answer turns a simple street address into a massive strategic weapon. By using a central hub concept, FedEx can service a drastically wider range of locations using way fewer airplanes. It's brilliant. It lets them perfectly match their flights with the actual package loads. But the real kicker? Because they have total, centralized control of everything from pickup to delivery, it massively cuts down on mishandling and transit delays. Their location strategy is literally the engine driving their reliability.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We're going to take a macro to micro journey to see exactly how the world's biggest companies systematically narrow down the mat. We'll hit the power of location, the global chessboard, the true cost of labor, tangible versus intangible risks, zoom into regions and specific sites, and wrap up with the clustering effect. Let's get to it.
All right, starting with number 1, the power of location.
The biggest takeaway here is that location strategy is a deeply long-term commitment. The moment you commit to a spot, a huge chunk of your resources and costs are instantly locked in place. You really can't just undo a massive factory footprint once thousands of tons of concrete are poured. Actually, picking the right facility location isn't just some operational checkbox. It's a foundational investment that dictates your fixed and variable costs for decades. No pressure, right?
Moving out to the macro view, Section 2, the global chessboard.
When executives are looking at the country level, they're filtering the entire globe using some intensely complex variables called key success factors. When they look at a map, they don't just see empty land or borders. They're meticulously weighing political risks, changing government regulations, and deep cultural nuances. They're hunting for massive new markets, checking energy availability, and obsessing over exchange rates. Globalization has essentially turned the world map into the ultimate high-stakes corporate checklist.
And to navigate all that chaos, they rely on hard data. Take the Global Competitiveness Index, for example. You've got countries like Switzerland and Singapore sitting right at the very top, numbers 1 and 2 offering incredible stability and infrastructure. Decision makers have to weigh the massive benefits of those premium environments against the potential of developing markets. Places like Mexico at 58, Russia at 66, or Chad all the way down at 142. Every single drop in rank represents a totally different calculation of risk versus reward.
Which brings us to Section 3, the true cost of labor.
Okay, we really need to bust a huge misconception right here. There is this popular idea that a cheaper daily wage automatically equals cheaper production. But it all actually comes down to labor productivity. Let's look at the math because it's fascinating. You might assume paying a worker $25 a day in Mexico is a total no-brainer compared to paying someone $70 a day in South Carolina, right? Well, if that South Carolina worker pumps out 60 units a day, your cost per unit is only $1.17. But if the worker in Mexico only produces 20 units a day, your cost per unit is actually higher, $1.25. So lower productivity can completely wipe out the benefits of lower wages. Raw wage rates are definitely not the whole story.
Next up, Section 4, tangible versus intangible risks.
Because labor is just one piece of the puzzle, companies have to factor in all sorts of different risks. First, you've got tangible costs. These are super straightforward. These are the hard numbers that accountants absolutely love. We're talking utility bills, the exact price of raw materials, regional taxes, and those labor rates we just talked about. Basically, the black and white numbers that literally keep the lights on and the machines running.
But then you have intangible costs, and these are way trickier. They aren't easily punched into a spreadsheet, but they are arguably just as crucial. We're looking at the quality of local schools, public transportation, and just general quality of life for the community. Plus, making decisions purely based on cheap labor can create some major ethical landmines. Companies really have to dig in and evaluate local attitudes toward union turnover and understand that different cultures globally have vastly different expectations when it comes to things like punctuality and legal frameworks.
To give you an idea of how they measure this, look at the Corruption Perceptions Index from Transparency International. Organizations use tools exactly like this to impartially grade those squishy, intangible political risks. They contrast highly transparent, super stable countries scoring a 90, like Denmark, against the USA at a 73, or all the way down to a 28 in Russia. Having a strict numeric score helps companies gauge the safety of their intellectual property before they go dropping millions of dollars into a brand new region. It's all about avoiding massive headaches down the road.
All right, Section 5, zooming in, from regions down to specific sites.
So, we've picked our country, we did the labor math, and we've checked the international risks. Now we move down the funnel to the regional level. Imagine scanning across the US Midwest. Suddenly, companies are scrutinizing a totally new set of key success factors. It becomes a hyper-local beauty pageant. What are the environmental regulations in this state versus just one state over? What's the local power grid like? And, maybe most importantly, what kind of massive tax incentives are local mayors and governors dangling to win their business? It's literally a strategic game of playing states off one another to get the absolute best deal.
And then we hit the ultimate micro level, the actual site decision. This is where they trace the exact proximity to interstates, airports, and rail lines. At this stage, it's literally about the physical dirt. Decision makers are looking at the exact size and cost of the lot, they're navigating hyper-local zoning laws, and figuring out the immediate environmental impact of pouring a foundation on that one specific piece of land.
Finally, Section 6, the clustering effect. We're going to wrap up with a truly fascinating phenomenon that, honestly, seems to defy all traditional competitive logic at first glance. Think about it. Why on earth would you intentionally build your massive business right next door to your biggest rival? Well, companies do it all the time. They intentionally cluster together. Winemakers cluster in Napa Valley simply because the land and climate are perfect. But it's not just agriculture. Software firms completely crowd into Silicon Valley to be near a critical mass of top-tier talent and venture capital. Theme parks like Disney and Universal, they group up in Orlando to capture those massive built-in tourist flows. The wild paradox here is that proximity to specific resources, specialized talent, and eager customers completely outweighs the fear of having your competitors right across the street. So, location is never, ever just an accident. It is a calculated, highly strategic weapon. As we finish up this explainer, I've got a challenge for you. Look closely at your own town or city. Look at the industrial parks, the retail centers, the corporate headquarters. What hidden location strategies, what key success factors, and what industry clusters are operating right under your nose to finding the businesses you walk past every single day? Once you start seeing the hidden architecture of location strategy, I guarantee you will never look at a map the same way again. Thanks for hanging out, and keep exploring.